Hi. So last time, our last video covered how to receive scaffolds which you have hired out to site, and we saw that to do that you just launch the return form and you are able to commit the returns, and we received the full number of scaffolds without any issue. But today I want to show you how to receive scaffolds which are either lost, not all of them. Let's say a client returns a number of scaffolds, but not all of them. So today I'm going to show you how to process lost scaffolds or damaged scaffolds using the Scaffolder software to capture this information so that you can process it. So to do this, we are going to raise a new order, and then we are going to receive back the scaffolds with both scenarios, and then we see how to process them. So this is your navigation interface, and like we did last time, to manage your scaffolds, you go to the Scaffolds Manager, click on the Scaffolds Manager, and you can see here it launches the interface which shows you all the details for your scaffold business, including, so on the left here you can see all the functions that you can perform, including adding to your scaffold stock. This is the total scaffold pool that we currently have. You can hire out scaffolds, as we are going to do in a short while. So this KPI here, or this figure here, shows you the total number of scaffolds hired out, including those that have been extended in other sites. And then of course this means that the scaffolds that are currently available for hire should be 800 less this 200, so that brings you down to 600 scaffolds. Okay, and you can see here the total cumulative cash flow. This is all the earnings that we have received, both from hiring out scaffolds and also from compensation for those which were lost or damaged. So you can agree with your client in case you want to be compensated for lost or broken scaffolds, then that money comes into this pool. Then this is all the balances that have accumulated, including balances yet to be paid for existing hires or past hires, or money that is just owed to your business by your clients. And then of course here you can see the total number of scaffolds that have been extended. Here are 20. All this information is summary information for what is displayed in this region, of course. So let me just scroll to this section. So the expected revenue that you saw up there, this, let me just show you very quickly. This 865,600 is an accumulation of all these amounts that have been paid into our account. So these are the ones that bring up to that total of 865,600. Then we have got pending balances of 204,000, and how those come about also is because of all these balances that are still pending. So you can see if you add up all these balances, they will add up to that amount, and you can be able to see the status of the accounts which still have balances. So if you see return here, it means the scaffolds have been returned. If you see extended hire or new hire or some other term here on this first section of the status, then you will know that the scaffolds are still out, or these are different thing. Then the second part of the status talks about the financials. So balance settled here means this account is clean, so there is no balance. But if you see partial clearance, it means there is likely a balance. Or you see something like partial payment. So partial clearance and partial payment, later on I will demonstrate to you the difference. So there is a difference between partial payment and partial clearance. Partial payment would usually refer to the first installment, which is a deposit. Partial clearance means it's an ongoing clearing of the balance owed. So let's say there was a balance of 50,000 here, and then you paid an extra 30,000 after you had paid a deposit. So that extra 30,000 is what changes the status to a partial clearance. Once it is settled, it will be balance settled or fully paid, like this one. Okay, so let's raise a new hire and then receive back those scaffolds with some lost. Or better yet, let's just use one that where the scaffolds are already out, and then we see some of them which have been returned with some loss. We'll start with some lost and then some damaged. So to do that, you click on return scaffolds, and let's browse a few records before we make that decision. So we want to search by status, and to do that you're going to look at some of this. So you see this is a new hire, fully paid. So we are going to look at all records which have got this. There is no balance remaining, because I want to demonstrate how the amount owed on that account will be reflected based on either damage or loss. So just select new hire, fully paid, and you can see since this spin button is disabled, then that means you only have one record to this status. And what we will note is the hire number. You can look at the order details. So on the 1st of September to 20th of September, this client hired out 20 steps. They still haven't returned any of those steps. So we can assume today is 20th and they're supposed to return all the 20 steps. The site location was Kilimani. The days of hire were 19. That was the agreed rate, and that is the total revenue that is expected from this transaction. If you look at the payment data, you can see the client cleared all the balances fully. So he paid fully for the project or for the hire. And since this status is a new hire, this means that the scaffolds are still out at site, but it is fully paid. So today what we are going to do is to receive these scaffolds back into the fold, but then we will simulate a loss or a damage, okay? And since there are still actions, you see this new hire means the scaffolds are out, so this verdict will be process record, because there's still an action that can be done on this hire. That is, we can decide to extend. You see there is no balance, this button is disabled, and there is no damage or loss so far that has been noted. So these two buttons are disabled. So the only thing you can do on this record is to extend it, assuming today is the last day of the hire, that is the 20th, okay, based on the hire details. So you can just extend from 20th to another date, but we will cover this in a different video. So let us go back to receiving scaffolds for this hire number, and then in that process some should be lost. So return scaffolds, that was hire number 10. Okay, that was this record. You can see there's no balance, so this is defaulted to 0. Now for us to process a loss, let's say this client lost 5 steps, so that means the quantity returned is 15. So I type there 15. Okay, now when I do that, like I showed you last time, this combo is enabled. Okay, so you can see you can be able to select what is the narrative for the unreturned scaffolds, and in this case let's work with lost pieces. The 5 pieces are actually lost, so you click on that to select that option. Okay, you just select it. Okay, then you can put remarks. So maybe you've agreed with that client that for every lost piece they are going to pay a certain amount of money. So you can put their remarks, 5 pieces lost by client, and has agreed to pay, let's say, a total of say 40,000 shillings to cover the loss. So this is basically, this is 8,000 shillings per piece. So you can just put a remark there, 8k per piece. You're good to go. So please note the higher number, because you're going to revisit this record so that you can see how the status change. So commit these returns. Okay, then say okay. So you can see the numbers here change. Okay, this was 800, remember that, but the scaffold that had been hired out were was it 160? I think 165 or something. Yeah, there was a number here. So once we returned the scaffolds, 15 was added on top of that. So total scaffolds hired out, sorry, let me just scroll down to that. So now what you have is the 5 scaffolds that had been hired out have been subtracted from the total pool because they're assumed lost. So our total scaffolds owned as of now has gone down by 5 steps to 795,000. And then those ones which are hired out are 180, which means they are less the 30 steps. Okay, 5 of them being lost, and there are 20 steps, 5 of them being lost and 20 being returned to the pool. If you scroll alongside, you will see these figures haven't changed because there was no balance that was committed in. Available scaffolds for hire are now 615 instead of 620, because we saw this was 600, and instead of returning 20 scaffolds, they returned 15. So now we are 615. Then we have a log here of scaffolds which have been damaged or lost. Okay, now what I want you to see also is that this is the record. So you will see 20 scaffolds are out, okay, but only 15 were returned. So that will make this record still active for processing of some kind. So you can see, if I scroll all the way to the right for you to see the status, you can see nothing affected the balances. The balances, this was fully cleared, but you can see the status is return, some lost. And then here you can be able to see what is the remark. Some of these remarks are auto-generated by the system. So you can see raise a separate invoice for 5 steps with this reference number, which is the higher number, and then this is the comment you added. These 5 pieces were lost by the client, and he has agreed to pay a total of 40,000 to cover this loss. That is 8,000 per piece, and that record. So that record remains open for processing that loss. Okay. Now we are going to do a second one where we have damages, so that I want us to combine these two so that you can see how the numbers are affected. So let's do this one. This is HN. We can have a look at the HN. Sorry. That is HN11. Okay. So you can just investigate the details of HN11 before you proceed to processing it. Okay. HN11. So this is the record. You can look at. So it's the only record in this which has that HN number. You can look at all the details. So 20 steps out, 0 in, 1st to 10th November, 9 days, 236,000. And we can see here the payment data. There is a balance of 6,000, which should remain. We will try to not to clear this on returning this scaffold, so that you can see how these numbers change when we are processing losses or damages. So you can see here amount paid was 30. There's a balance of 6,000. The status is a new hire, which was, so this was like a deposit. That is why it says partial payment. If you pay 3,000 here, or say some amount, this will change to partial clearance. Okay, so let's close that. There are several action options. You can settle the balance because there's that balance. You can also extend the hire for this order, but we won't do that. So we want to return with some damaged. Okay, so let's return for HN11. Sorry, so that one, you go to return scaffolds, select HN11. So you can see there's a balance of 6,000, 20 steps. So let's do a partial clearance of 3,000 shillings so that you see how the status changes. But we return only 10. So 10 were damaged, broken or damaged, so cannot be used. So this 10, client has agreed. You can say client has agreed to settle compensation for damaged scaffolds at a rate of, let's say, 5k per piece. So that comes to 50,000 because there are 10 steps in total, right? Then you commit that, commit returns, say okay. So you can see the numbers again have changed. So this was 795, remember, but now since 10 of them have been damaged, and they are no longer usable in the common pool, then they are shifted to another pool called damaged scaffolds. So you can see here the number has reduced from 795 to 785, which are usable. Then of course the ones which are hired out now are still 160, because we have returned quote unquote that number. Then these balances also change. This was 865, but we paid in 3,000, so you can see it has gone to 868. This was some amount which has increased, so there's still a this has reduced by 3,000, so there's still a balance here of 201. 3,000 has been taken out. And then I wanted you to note this number. So this was 5, the previous lost scaffolds. Then we had 10 which have been damaged. So total cumulative lost and damaged scaffolds now stands at 15. And remember, when you add this 15 back here, you get how many? 800, which was the original number. So let's look at the record. So it was this HN11. You can see 20, 10. So not all of them have been returned. 10 have been lost. And if you go to the status, let's go here. So you can see for this one, we were expecting 36,000. So far they had paid 30,000, but we paid 3,000 extra when we were returning this set. So there is still a balance of 3,000, and then you see the status has changed to return some damaged. Okay, this is some lost, this is some damaged, and you can see the color codes are different. And then you see the instruction here to raise a separate invoice for 10 steps with this reference number, and the client has agreed to pay that amount. These remarks are important when now you're following up with compensation, and then of course the other information is still retained. So now, since we can no longer access these records from return scaffolds, how do we receive compensation? We can see HN10 and 11 are not here, so we cannot receive any payments using this interface. The only way to settle damages or losses is through the browse records. So we are going to settle first of all the lost ones, and then we settle the damaged ones. Now, to settle the lost ones, I want you to note something. When you settle lost scaffolds, this number still remains as it is, but you assume that the amount that the client pays is deposited into your business's account. So this amount will go up by that same amount, but it won't change the quantity. Let's say, for example, total scaffolds owned, until you deliberately go and add. So you can add those 5 scaffolds using this. So you can either be fresh stock, fixed damage, or replace lost. So let's go back to browse records, and for the ones which were lost, you can always use the status. Just click on this and say return some lost. So this was the record where we had 5 which were lost. Look at the order details, so you can know that 5 were lost because only 15 were returned. Okay, look at the payment data. So this one will help you to see the remarks. So the remarks is return some lost, and the amount that is to be paid by the client is 40,000. So to handle this, I want you to note that this amount should go up by 40,000. That will be paid into our account by the client. Okay, so you can go to browse record, that was return some lost, or you can go directly to the HM and then the action options. So you can see you cannot extend because they were all returned with some lost. There's no balance on this account, so you can't settle any, because you see, look at payment data is 0, so no need to settle any balance. So you can only process the damage. When you click on process damage, you can see out of these 20 steps, 5 were lost, and their client agreed to pay 40,000. So we capture that 40,000 there as compensation. We process. Okay, and that is updated. Exit. So you can see here the amount has increased by 40,000. Okay, but the numbers haven't changed. We still have 785 available for us, and even those which are the 5 which have been replaced, we still capture that information as those which were lost. So the only thing that changes in this case is the total cumulative cash inflow being payment has increased because of the payment for the lost ones, and the status of this record. So you can see this record will be closed on account of this number changing to 20. It was 15, but now it has changed to 20, means the 5 which were lost have been compensated for. So if we wish, we can actually add the 5 back to the pool by paying out. Though this system doesn't capture expenses, you can take this money out and track it using your other software for tracking expenses, and then you can increase this stock. So let's look at the status for this record. If you scroll all the way to the right, you will notice one thing. Yeah, here it is. So you can see here the status has changed to return lost paid for. Okay, return lost paid for, and you can see everything else remains the same. If I look at the status of that record, that was HM10, there you go. You can see the record is closed, so there's no issue on this account. We are clean, we are good with that client, and we can decide to add scaffold stock. So we can say we are replacing the ones which had been lost. Okay, and there were 5 in number. So this number will not change because this tracks cumulative inflows, whether you're paying from this amount or not. So if I say add stock, I'm back to 790. So now I have only the 10 damaged. So I want you to see the effect of taking the ones which are damaged from the damaged pool. So this is the damaged pool. So we are going to take the 10 which are here, fix all of them, and return them to our available total owned scaffold which are available for hire. Okay. So to do that, go to browse records, and then go to return some damaged. So you can see this is the status of the record. You can see there were still 10 steps outside, 9 days, 36,000. Payment data, you can see there's a balance of 3,000. That's the instruction. You are supposed to be paid 50,000 for the damages. So you can see here, return some damaged. So to receive back or to fix the ones which are damaged, just click on action option. So you can see you can settle balance while also processing damages. I want you to note that the amount paid for processing damages does not affect the balance that is still on this account. So you see this is the balance 3,000. So we are going to receive this 50,000 into this pool. Okay, so this will be 958. But the balance on this account will still remain. This is the HN. This 3,000 will still remain. This status will change. Okay, this status will change, but this balance will still remain until it is settled properly, because that is an amount that is supposed to go towards the hire. Okay, not the replacement of the damage. Now, once we fix the damaged, they are supposed to return to the common pool. So this number should change when you add back. But first, let us receive compensation before we fix. Okay, so you browse, go to, we can just say return some damaged. So there is still an action here. View order details. You see there are 10 steps remaining. View payment data. So this is 50,000. This is why this instruction is very important. Of course, you're going to raise an invoice to charge the client for this damage. So that's 50,000. Then you come to action options and process damages. So you can see return some damages. Then the amount was 50,000. Process that. See okay. Then exit browse. So you can see this has gone up to 950,000, which means there's a 50K that has been deposited into the account. But still, this is 790 until you return from this pool what is damaged. Okay. So you can say very quickly, just add back the 15 which were damaged, fixed damaged. So there were 10 actually, yeah, so there were 10. Then say add to stock. So what happens is that now you're back to your 800 that was original, and you can see here the 10 which were amongst the 15, the 5 having been lost, the 10 have been fixed and returned back to the common pool. So that is why that number has changed. And then when you look at this record, this one, you can see the scaffold in has been closed by saying that the damaged scaffolds have been fixed. So it's like a full return. And if you scroll all the way to the right, you will see that the balance of 3,000 is still there, because this pertains to the hire, not the damage. Okay, so the client so far has paid 33,000. there is the original amount of 36,000 that's supposed to be paid in full, so there's a balance of 3,000. Note here that now the status has changed to return damage paid for, so this account will also be closed. So you can just go to browse records to confirm that it was HN11, right? Is it HN11? Yes. Oh, so it's still process record because there is a balance. If you want to close this, you can just settle the balance from here. So you can do a full settlement, 3,000, and then offset the balance. Okay, so you will notice here that the amount again has gone up by 3,000, and you can look at the status. You see the balance has been cleared, and when you go to the browse records, you will also realize that the record is closed because there's no further processing required. Okay, and that's about it for losses and damages. Thank you.